welcome to the Unriveted podcast, where we talk about technology such as digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and people. Today, our broadcast is brought to you in part by the Verb Corporation. John, this is where your words have actions.
It's good to know. Good to know. Where if it isn't actionable, there's no point to doing it, right, Martin?
That is words well spoken.
Good, good. So I hear that today we do not have a guest today. Today we are going to have a discussion, just the two of us, on multimodal large language models, a growing topic of interest and research in the AI community. What do you think about that?
John, that is amazing. And said another way for people, for our listeners, multimodal generative AI is an opportunity in the making for all of us. And it's where we can apply all the facets of large language models together, whether it's voice, text, imagery, video, and cognition. So, applying all that together, John, I think we can have some magic. What do you think?
I think so. I think, I've heard the acronym floating around to MLLM for multimodal large language model. Um, and, we just love acronyms. But
Well,
I'm kind of wondering, and let me get your opinion on this as we move forward here. Is it still a language model if it's capable of working with multiple types of input, language, video, audio, images, what have you?
yeah, good question, John. So maybe we drop the language part of it and just leave it as part of generative AI as one of the source inputs for generative AI, whether it being one of the other facets other than a typed word. It could be a spoken word and a derived image, a derived video, a video input, all the above, and mash them up together.
Right, right. It's a task that's definitely easier said than done. I think people, when ChatGPT, came out, obviously not the first large language model, but I think people saw what it was capable of doing, and without being, without us all being engineers, let alone generative AI engineers, we probably looked at things like, well, why can't we do these same things with, images, video, other modalities at the same level? And we haven't made it to that spot yet, but it sounds like that is the next frontier for a lot of different organizations. And how do we coalesce, text with all these other ways that we input our environment? So I think we're this, I'm always hesitant, Martin, to use the term artificial intelligence, and LLMs are starting to maybe change my mind a little bit, but I think multimodal LLMs or MLMs or whatever we want to call them. Maybe we are slowly approaching that level, right?
I think so, John. And I think some of the examples that we can already play with and do experimentation, which we have access to either via API or from the actual interfaces itself, or like the integrations for image generation with text,
Mm.
video generation with text. There's been some announcements from OpenAI. Google's been in this space but hasn't publicly opened theirs up. Same with Facebook. All kinds of fun stuff like music generation, video generation, very cinematic quality things that you can see in their experimentation warehouse. It's sort of amazing to, if you want to put it together, how I could put text, voice, and images together to create something very entertaining. It could change the whole creator economy. It could change how people perceive intellectual or copyright protection. Some good questions. We could probably make this a multi-part series and do some living examples. But for this talk, John, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on what are some of the implications of all this. Think about potential applications of it, and where do you see it?
Yeah, I think it's a very timely topic, considering the use of generative AI was part of the reason for the recent Hollywood writers and actors strike. And I'm not sure of all the exact details of what their um, issues were with AI, other than, we can have a tool like ChatGPT write the script for a TV show, or write a movie script with the click of a button, without having to use the creativity of humans. I think that that's the general idea of it. But applications wise, Martin, you and I mean, we've been using image, generative image AI with multimodal text prompting, in some of our viewers that have seen our show on YouTube, where we have a visual element, not just the podcast, have seen some of your wizardry using Leonardo AI, where we can take a model, we can pass it along an image as a prompt. We can also pass it along text as a prompt, and it can take those two modalities and create a entirely new image using those two inputs. And I think, and I don't know if it was Leonardo AI, but some tool, maybe it was Midjourney, or Dolly. Um, Actually, someone created an AI generated image for like an art contest, and they actually won the award. So, it's definitely capable. And then to your point, what happens to like the copyright, or, how are we able to do, differentiate the human part from um, the AI part? And I think the other thing too, and I'll get your point on this, is someone from, I don't remember, Sundar Pichai, or Mark Zuckerberg, or Elon Musk, one of these tech gurus, has said that they think that the main application for AI, and in this case I say multimodal AI, will be everyone in the world will have a personalized personal assistant. We're all familiar with Siri and Alexa, and Google, which I don't know if it has it. Does Google have a name, or is it just Hey Google? Which I gotta say quietly. If I say that too loud, it'll turn on, and then we'll hear that in the background. But those are two applications. So interested. I mean, you probably have a couple more that come to mind that I'm not
Yeah, you just set off my watch here, so I'm gonna put my watch aside. So, no hay with Siri together for me today. Thank you.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's really clear. I think that the following up on my gold rush, or fool's gold rush analogy here, there's a lot in the creative industry side that people are envisioning and playing out with. And are you slightly creative to use it? Yes. Are you the instantiator or the artiste that created the musical notes that can't come out of it in an auditory sense? That's kind of weak. Are you the
Mhm.
artiste with the pixel magic? Same comment. But it is fun to play with. I think the concerns are where this is trained to do that. Using like a service like Spotify, I just did a panel discussion with peers on this area, where Spotify might consider creating its own originated music that will fit your musical taste. Well, think about what Spotify does, and creating music for you off of what sources. Where did they get trained? Were they trained off of stuff that's already copywritten? And are they mimicking certain artists to your liking, and mashing it up? There's some question marks there, but it's fun to play with. I don't know you
Mhm.
should profit from things that you're effectively stealing, if you want to call it that, or maybe not licensing and paying the fee for, if that's more applicable. If you license and pay the fee, then game on. Go ahead, let it happen. And it makes sense. It does. If
Mhm.
you're going to
Mhm.
own if you want to portray Batman, then you want to pay who owns the rights to the name Batman.
Right, right. I think, copyright law in general, and maybe this has already happened in some capacity. And surely things again like the writer's strike will give a signal that this is something that needs to happen. copyright law probably needs to be rewritten in a way to accommodate for, ethical or proper uses of other people's work as a means of training a system. Because obviously the systems that are creating images or audio or video are creating something unique, but to get to that point, we have to use something that was already created by an individual, right? So, it's not in the traditional sense where someone plagiarizes your book or your movie or your song, which we've seen countless legal cases for that over the years. And I think we just saw a couple this year, actually, of like, hey, you stole my song. But yeah, how do we come up with that balance between, we're using your work, we're using a human's work to train a multimodal model like
Yeah.
this, say that 3 times fast. Um, but we're not, we're using it in a capacity that we haven't really thought of using it before. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out in terms of copyright law.
Yeah, and I have ideas here where this makes sense, but I think we could go beyond the creative side. I think the creative's like the eye candy. It's what we see today,
Mm-hmm.
and really focus in on some great opportunities for multimodal in perhaps education, healthcare, customer service, where you're not worried about the plagiarization. You're not worried about a copyright. Well, there are places for copyright patents and trademarks. Applicable to all this, but it's a different area. It's not creative. You're hopefully doing something for the good of humankind.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be more specific here in healthcare, if you can improve healthcare quality, diagnosis of healthcare concerns, drive better outcomes, lower the cost of overall health maintenance, that sounds like a win-win for everyone. What do you think?
I would say so. The I just read an article the other day, and actually the content of the article really wasn't telling me anything that was new. In fact, it was stressing the fact that the problem was getting worse. Was that the healthcare industry is in dire straits of having enough RNs, nurse practitioners, doctors, specialists. The population of the world is obviously, what are we at? 8 billion people now.
Who counts?
So
Who counts?
someone's going out and counting every individual, baby in the hospital, I suppose, right? But that point aside, obviously we have a lot more people, and population growth seems to be like at an exponential rate now. Since I think you don't have to go back too many years for the world population to be like 2 billion people. Now we're at 8 billion, like 100 years later. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. So healthcare, yes. And I've had and the conversation I've had with a lot of friends that are in the field, nurses, nurse practitioners, radiologists, is how are you going to work with these tools that can, go beyond what we see in language models, but go into, now they can ingest dictation. Maybe you're looking at a patient and you're taking notes rather than writing them down, or X-rays for a radiologist. And you get to the point where those tools are more powerful and more accurate than the humans themselves. So maybe there's a benefit in this, but I think the bigger problem, and I know we're kind of straying off the topic of multimodal to more of like the ethical area, but I think it's not the problem of the capability of these types of models to do what they're supposed to do. I think it's going to be the human side that has to come up with ways to adapt and feel comfortable working with those tools. In other words, augmented intelligence, Mark. Augmented intelligence. The real AI augmented. Had to throw that in there.
You know what, John? You bring up, I think, something that's so true that, at the highest level, we should think about augmented intelligence encompassing everything we think is artificial intelligence, plus maybe even process automation, robotic process automation, and, mash it all together and put it in a box and ship it out. There you are. Here's your digital assistant in an augmented reality or an augmented intelligence world for you.
Well, you said augmented, augmented reality, which I know that was a big thing, maybe what, 3 to 5 years ago or something when we had Google Glass. Whatever happened to Google Glass? I was really excited. I just got my LASIK vision correction done and didn't have to wear glasses anymore. But then I got excited that I might have another reason to wear glasses or contacts if they could put it in the contacts. But that's probably a few decades away from us, I would imagine.
Yeah. So coming back to how it sews to potentially healthcare, you can tie the educational componentry around and training and education that would be formulative to the foundation of
Mhm.
learning, and then help fill up the gaps for capability of where people need to be for certain high demand roles. And this is applicable across multiple uh, types of industries, but in healthcare, I could see it hugely valuable for, a physician, what do they call a personal assistant, a physician's assistant, a PA,
Mhm.
practicing with more guidance with educational assistants on top of that with, a healthcare automated assistant associated with them using their voice, an image of what they're seeing in the patient, or a video, and it goes into the magical machine. The machine comes out and says, "Look for something else," or ask certain questions, or take a certain type of diagnostic test. It could be a blood test, etc. And so I think it's still a win-win, and it's how it all applies. And yeah, I think those are the greater. There I go in my broken. I did grow up in Oakland and went through the public school system, so I do have to apologize for my use of the English language at times.
Right,
But
right. You can do more better than that, Martin. You can
I
do
could
more
do
better
much
than
more. I could be more uniquer too.
that.
Yeah,
Anyway, sorry.
it's all great. It's all great. It's all good too. Um, but yeah, I think the opportunity is huge. The customer care, customer service area is also, going beyond the visual chatbot to get the video chatbot that actually receives the video as someone going, "Hey, I need help," and maybe there's information to be gleaned out of that. And there's definitely the dating application. Oh boy, don't even go there. Um, and virtual bots replacing humans in virtual dating, and maybe your virtual bot can date someone else's virtual bot, and would that be the ultimate and multimodal waste of time?
I think it'd be the ultimate insult if your virtual dating bot can date another virtual dating bot while you're still sitting at home not doing anything. So even my virtual dating bot, Martin, my multimodal LLM powered dating bot can get a virtual date, but I can't. So maybe that's maybe we don't want to. Maybe some people don't want to go down that path. But everything else you said, yeah, makes sense, right? I mean, nowadays, take it for what it is, but it seems like there's a lot of jobs out there that people just don't want to do anymore, right? It kind of every time there's an economic, event, like first we had the Great Recession, and a bunch of people like lost their jobs, and then a bunch of those jobs never returned and got replaced with automation. We had the same thing with COVID, although it was not nearly as pronounced and didn't last nearly as long. And I think just the people being isolated in their homes and being like, wow, like life is much better when I don't have to work. Um, which I'm not disagreeing with that. I mean, I would like that too, but ultimately that almost doesn't pan out. So again, I think, some of these things, not only will these tools be valuable for filling in the gaps for some of those roles that people just don't want to do anymore, and maybe rightfully so that they don't want to do them, but also the fact, again, going back to what I said earlier, that the number of people that we have on the planet is growing, and the number of services and things that we need to do to accommodate everyone, if that's not growing at the same rate, then some of these tools can fill in that gap, um compared to using like a human being, or make things more efficient, like your example with an RN using some sort of augmented intelligence system that can tell them what questions to ask, what to look for. They have their Google Glass, Google Glasses when they go into their patient's room, and they can see 20 patients a day instead of maybe like 8 patients a day, but I'll provide them with the same level of care that if they spent, 2 hours with each of those people. So yeah, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid, but who
In the
knows?
world of not afraid, well, let's quickly summarize. The opportunity for multimodal generative AI is going to be very powerful. Let's just be right to the point. And the opportunities, maybe it's not a new gold rush, maybe it's a new platinum rush. Maybe it's a higher level cost problem because it does take a carbon footprint to use this technology. But with that, I think this is an interesting topic, and I think we should come back and revisit maybe a deeper dive into some of the areas and maybe some living examples of using multimodal. What do you think, John?
I think so. I think there's actually some models out there, some specific multimodal models that are either out now or are soon to be let out, that we could talk about maybe directly, and one that particular, and we won't talk about it now, but Google recently announced a model called the Gemini model that is supposed to be 5 times more powerful than GPT-4 and a massive 65 trillion trainable parameters trained on YouTube data. So at least they're transparent about where it came from. But we'll save that for another conversation.
John, as always, it's been fun and entertaining. Let's call this one a wrap. And until next time, let's go multimodal generative at home.
Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, John.